Okay, so Andy, part two. Just wanted to carry on our chat really regarding the games.
Yeah.
And people can see here from the box art, etc. The art itself, and that's one of the things that I really liked about the Eastern Empire game as well. This it was it Cruikshank and Gilray, the cartoon East sort of artwork. What was your idea behind that?
Okay, so at the time, I mean, especially with Egypt, but you know, a lot of the Maida campaigns. At the time, a lot of the people back home in England, say, or in France, you know, a lot of the information they're getting is through pamphlets and papers, which a lot of them are cartoons, you know, depictions of cartoons of the events that happened. So you know, an Englishman in 1799 England hearing about what's Napoleon up to in Egypt, he's most likely to get most of his information from looking at cartoons.
Yeah.
Because that, you know, they are effectively a contemporary primary source of what most people thought, because you know, most Englishmen wouldn't have seen anything of Egypt. They wouldn't know what the pyramids were or the Sphinx or anything.
No, sure.
And so they've got no idea about it other than what they're seeing. So I kind of view these cartoons as a really interesting primary historical source of the mood, you know, the perception of what's going on, and how it's portrayed, you know, to the masses. Obviously, the cartoons are being drawn by people that have got one political stance or another. I mean, Gilray and George Cruikshank and Isaac Cruikshank. Isaac was his father, George's son. They produced quite a lot of these cartoons, and they're obviously trying to, you know, they got their own axe to grind, and they're saying different things. But I find them really interesting.
Yeah,
and there's so many of them. I mean, probably most people that know anything about these type of cartoons have probably seen the Plum Pudding, which you've got Bonaparte soaring up the globe with William Pitt. And you know, it's the most famous cartoon, I think, of all from this period. But you know, I don't know how often they were producing these cartoons, but it's almost like, you know, they were producing them like almost daily or weekly. You know, there certainly is. There's a massive wealth of cartoons available. They're all 200 odd years old, so they're all free domain. So you can use these fantastic, wonderful images to illustrate your game, and you're illustrating it with what is effectively a primary historical document.
They're very intricate as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, this one particularly is.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great art, and this
as well.
And this is kind of art that's telling a story in a way that, you know, some of the great oil paintings that had been commissioned at the time, often commissioned by the generals or the kings or the richer people, to be seen by the kings and the richer people. You know, not many peasants in the street are gonna have seen, you know, Napoleon crossing the Alps by David or something. They're not going to have access to see that. There's no internet, there's no phones, there's no social media, there's nothing. Whereas these cartoons that have been run off in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands and distributed, you know, every normal everyday man would have had a chance, and woman would have had a chance to have seen these. So to me, the contemporary cartoons, I mean, Gilray and Cruikshank, they're not the only ones. There are quite a few other artists as well. They are offering a kind of the pictures are offering a window into what the people back at home would have viewed the war, or the Napoleonic Wars and the Revolutionary Wars as. You know, that's all they got really. So that's what attracts me to them.
Yeah.
And plus, you know, fantastic subject matter, and you know, a lot of them have been coloured, you know, so just great. I just think they just lend so much period flavour to the games. And
I think they blend in really well as well with your box colour, your colour themes throughout each of your periods that you're doing. So you know, maybe you got the red, and obviously with the Eastern Empire you got the yellow, and I know obviously your next one, Capri, I think it is blue, isn't it? So again, with like what you've done with your core mechanics following through in each game, you've got your cartoonist art and the color themes following through in each of the campaigns you're doing as well. Is that kind of your process likely to continue? Is that what you're planning to do?
This ideally, I want all the series to effectively have the same box design. So they're all going to have the same sort of layout. The game name at the top and the limits of glory and the campaign number. And then the game uses this event clock mechanic, which has got like 24 boxes, and the boxes are the flags of the nation, and the flag of the nation that's going to benefit from the event is on the event clock. So again, in Maida, we've got the French, the British, the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, or Neapolitan troops, and the Russians, because the Russians are in Naples at the start of the campaign. So on the edge of each box will be the flags that are on the event. So in the Egypt game, we've got the French flag, the British flag, the Ottoman flag, and the closest flag that I could see to represent the Mamelukes from the literature that I could find. I don't know whether the Mamelukes actually had any kind of national flag, but it does seem to be often related with the Mamelukes, a certain flag, which is the one that I've used.
Sure.
But whether
again, bit of artistic license, maybe it's not a problem, is it?
It's tough to get all of the information that you need sometimes. So you get go with what you got.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a bit about the component quality and the box art, which we've talked about in the box. Obviously, you're using a British company, Dice Sports.
Yeah, Dice Sports in Sheffield. So there's a chap there called Rob Butler who is incredibly helpful, and he's helped me a lot. Obviously, Bonaparte's Eastern Empire is the first game that I've actually produced myself. Coalition's obviously being produced by Phalanx, not by myself. And so it's a steep learning curve for me, and having someone that can help you through that process was absolutely invaluable. And Rob is just, the most helpful person that you could want, really knowledgeable. And when I couldn't quite get things right, he'd say, "Don't worry, just send what you got, and I'll adjust it for you and get it right." So just couldn't be better.
No, sure.
English company, it's good to support, English manufacturers as well, being an English company ourselves. So just,
that's good.
Just really been impressed, and the quality is, everything I could hope for. Really, I've been so impressed with the quality of the work they're producing.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think the components and the box and everything in there, the artwork, it's top drawer, and it's quite refreshing to see something coming from homegrown, really, from the UK, and supporting UK companies and UK game design and game companies. So it's a credit to you and the guys at Dice Sports. Really, I think you've done a really good job.
They've been really good, and done everything that they said they was going to do. Perfect.
That's good. And obviously you launched the Eastern Empire through GameFound, and that's sort of close to being delivered on now. So in terms of your timeline, is that kind of kept pretty close to the timeline you set originally, as far as backers are concerned?
Yeah, so on GameFound, the actual campaign, we ran the actual campaign last June to July, and set as the delivery goal June this year. So we gave ourselves a year to get. So fulfillment should be by June, and we're hoping that pretty much everyone would have got their games by the end of April. So fingers crossed, we're going to be a couple of months ahead of what we'd estimated. All the fulfillment is being handled by another English company called GMS Hobby Logistics. And so all the worldwide distribution is going out from them. So we're not sort of shipping a pallet to another distribution center in America or in Asia or anything like that. Nothing like that happening. So they've assured me that once they start, whether they're in Australia or America or wherever they are, people will be getting their games within a couple of weeks of the start of shipping. They'll all be going airmail. They won't be on a ship.
That's great.
So yeah, hopefully.
I think you've done really well. Again, I know it's your second game in effect. Obviously, with your tie up with Phalanx as well, but for your first game under your own umbrella, to deliver potentially early. I've backed many Kickstarters and GameFound campaigns, and you don't expect things to generally come on time because there's always things that crop up along the way. But you've obviously, balanced expectations from the outset with a sensible timeline on delivery and delivered early. So you've under-promised, over-delivered, which is ideal, really. Fingers crossed, anyway. So obviously, Bonaparte's Eastern Empire, the Egyptian campaign, now Maida. Then I think you got Capri and Santa Mora, Santa Mora. Yeah. So what was your reasons for doing Maida next, and then the two smaller versions that you got coming up afterwards?
Okay, so the game system that have developed, the mechanics, the way the games work, they lend themselves really to campaigns, because you're kind of re-fighting a whole campaign. It's not just a battle. Yeah. So even though Maida is named after the Battle of Maida, it is effectively the Maida campaign, and the game mechanics and the way it works suits a game where you've got very different types of troops and different different people wanting different things from it. So in Egypt you've got the Mamelukes that are quite different from the British, and you've got the Ottomans that they had some European trained troops and some not. The Mamelukes were almost like a medieval army. You've got the French army, all very different ways of fighting and having different abilities, and the game is designed to be able to cope with those differences and make it so it's not so one-sided that it's not a game. And so in Maida, we got the French invading southern Italy against the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, which is still it's like an old regime power, minor power, very old-fashioned army, on its own, not really capable at all of standing up to the French. So the British government said William Pitt said, we'll supply a British and a Russian army to support the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies if they would join the Third Coalition, which they did after effectively lying to Napoleon, saying that they were going to keep out of it, and then immediately joined it. Which is one of the reasons why they were invaded, because Napoleon was so upset with them. So you've got British troops, you've got these Neapolitan, old regime troops, you've got French troops, but then you've also got this huge guerrilla war that went on in the south of Italy, which is not really sort of spoken about that much. I mean, everyone knows about the guerrillas in Spain, and all the fighting in the peninsula, or the Spanish guerrillas. But before this, in 1806, but 2 years before, the French had even gone into Spain, really, there was quite a guerrilla war. Calabrian guerrillas fighting, because they didn't particularly like the King of the Two Sicilies either. Right. They certainly didn't want the French, and they were willing to cooperate with the British to get rid of the French, but they didn't want the British there either. They were quite happy to have it to themselves, really. Sure. So there's this kind of whole dynamic of mixtures of motivations and troop types, and the game suits it really well. It's doing something like the Waterloo campaign or the Austerlitz campaign, where all the armies are all kind of trained European armies that are all very similar, with massive armies. The mechanics, the way the game works, doesn't suit that type of game well. Okay. So I'm looking for campaigns that are on the fringe, campaigns that are a little bit eclectic, a little bit interesting, got stuff going on that you don't normally expect on a huge battlefield. I mean, the Battle of Maida itself is very small. I mean, 5,000-6,000 men per side, roughly, in the actual battle. When you compare that to Austerlitz that had gone on sort of 6 months before, I mean, it's different ball game, isn't it? It has no comparison, really. Okay. And so obviously,
Maida is your next one that you're looking to sort of launch. I know you're in playtest stage still, and sort of these are some prototypes that you've got of the initial box, etc. And I'm going to do an unboxing of some of these components in due course for you as well.
Brilliant.
So beyond that, then you're planning Capri and Santa Mora. So you're taking your series, your campaign series, perhaps to a slightly different level with those ones, because you're going for something on a slightly smaller scale, with a shorter play period. But from what you were saying when we were talking about this earlier, mechanically it's all going to work exactly the same way. You're just reducing the size to some degree.
Absolutely. So some of it, to a degree, is a bit of a design experiment for me, in that both the games so far, Maida and Bonaparte's Eastern Empire, use 4 dice. Each player has 4 dice.
Yeah.
And so you're making decisions and things are happening with either 1, 2, 3, or 4 dice. And so you have 24 events, 4, 6 is 24. So I wanted to see if I could make a filler game, a game at the end of the evening, and you want to play something else because it's too early to go home, but there's not quite enough time for a big game.
Yep.
Or if you're at a convention and you're waiting before lunch, you've got half an hour or an hour to spend. I wanted to get a game in that space. So I wanted really to see if I could design one in that space using the same system, but only using 3 dice. It means you can only get 18 events. Or 18 events on the event table. Obviously, some of the events have a second event as well. So there's less stuff occurring, which shortens the time frame down.
Right. Okay.
Capri and Santa Mora, they're, it's a bit like island hopping in the Pacific in the Second World War. This is island hopping in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Interesting though, that the 2 battles in Capri, the British hold Capri in the Bay of Naples, and they part of the Maida campaign, a chap called Sidney Smith, who kind of runs through a lot of these games, captures Capri.
Okay.
And the British then hold it for like 2 years. So they've got there's a British governor, a chap called Hudson Lowe, who becomes the jailer of Napoleon on St Helena, a few years later, 9 years later.
Okay.
But Hudson Lowe is the governor of Capri, and the French want Capri back because Murat is now king of Naples, and he doesn't really like the idea of a British-held island just off the Bay of Naples, overlooking where he lives.
Yeah.
So he's determined to invade and take it back. And so Capri is the French invasion of Capri to get it back from the British.
Okay.
In 1808.
Yeah.
And then Santa Mora is because the French, after the Treaty of Tilst in 1807, they get the Ionian Islands as part of the deal. Mm-hmm. And so the French are occupying Santa Mora, and the British want to capture it back. They've been going around capturing all the different Ionian islands. They've managed to capture all of them except for Corfu and Santa Mora. And so in 1810, they launched an expedition because Santa Mora's quite a bit bigger than some of the other Zante and stuff, quite a lot smaller. Yep. Santa Mora's got about 1,000 French troops on it. It's got about 800 Albanian troops supporting the French. There's a massive fortress in a really strong position. And so it's a bit of a tougher nut to crack. So the British send an invasion force with capital ships and a whole hodgepodge of different nationality troops. There's Greek troops and Calabrian troops, and there's Tyrol's Swiss regiment and British troops and Marines and all these sort of things. So again, lending it to this series well, there's lots of different nationalities. There's Greek nationalism in there. There's Albanians in there, and it's all going on.
Sure.
And you're fighting over this fortress of Santa Mora. But both campaigns are quite short as well in historical terms. The invasion of Capri, probably took 2 or 3 weeks in total, depends on what you count as the start and the finish.
Yeah.
The same with Santa Mora. Only took 2 or 3 weeks from start to finish. In fact, once the British had laid the guns onto the fortress, after about 8 days, the French surrendered. So both campaigns are really quite short. So historically, the campaigns are very short, which is great for a short game.
Yeah.
The number of troops is much smaller. The number of personalities, the number of commanders, much smaller. So everything about the game is scaled down to try and so you'll get 2 games in one box. You'll have Capri as a standalone game and Santamora as a standalone game, and they're both in the same box effectively.
Great.
So you'd get
multi-pack.
You'd get a multi-pack of 2 games,
yeah.
And each one is designed to take about 45 minutes to an hour.
So it's again a different proposition maybe from some of the other games, which are going to be that bit longer and a bit on a bigger scale, but again they all interact very nicely, and again kind of following that same approach of looking for different sort of maybe sideline campaigns that were going on while these big battles were happening around Europe as well. So interesting. So looking beyond Capri and Santamora, which I know will follow Maida, further campaigns in mind? Anything else kind of that you can share at the moment, or not?
I'm quite happy to share. Maybe foolish, but I'm quite happy to share.
Okay.
So the next game that I've started doing some research into, which I follow Capri and Santamora, is going to be the Vendée 1793, the French Civil War.
Yep.
So again, nasty civil war, lots of different factions, lots of quite a lot of religious involvement as well. You got the stout Republicans, you got the Royalists and the Catholic Army. You got the possibility of British intervention. It didn't actually happen, but the British were sending a support force under the Duke of York, I think it was.
Yeah.
And so there's the potential that could be an event that could occur. So there's interesting things to explore. It went on for about the main fighting in the 1793, because it's kind of almost like a series of civil wars in Vendée. It sort of rumbled on for quite a few years. But the main Vendéan war that most people think of when they think of the revolt in the Vendée is what happened in the year of 1793, and it went on for most of that year.
Sure.
So it's quite a long campaign. There's a lot of intervention of French Republican armies. They keep sending armies and then they don't do so well, so they send another army and so on. So there's fresh troops turning up all the time. The Catholic Royalist army are raising new units all around the area. Right. And so there's lots, again, lending itself to the system, lots of events occurring at different times that can have different impacts, and lots of really interesting and flamboyant commanders. Especially on the Royalist Catholic side.
Sure.
Some very interesting things to explore there. So that will be the next campaign.
Interesting. And that again is going to be more a scale of this.
So I go back to this. It would be a 4 dice.
Yeah.
Same. So these games are designed to last about 3 hours ish. Some might go slightly longer. Some might go slightly less. The Capri and Santamora is designed to last an hour or just slightly longer.
Okay.
So it'll be the Vendée after that.
Okay.
And really part of the reason why I'm exploring trying to design with 3 dice is because going forward, eventually I want to try and design a 5 dice version of it, which will open up to the possibility of many more events. So you can have 30 events on the event table.
Right.
Some of the events have a second event, like a second event tile, and some of the events are repeatable, so certain things can happen again and again.
Okay.
And so there's plenty of playability in these events, but by going to 5 dice, it can open the scale up a lot bigger. And my intention is to try and do the Peninsular War.
Oh.
And when I say the Peninsula, I mean the Peninsular War. So 1808 through to 1814, the whole lot.
Put me at the top of the list. So, yes, I love the interest.
And that'll be a 5 dice game.
Yeah.
Designed to probably play all day, like a 6-hour game, I expect. And it may well end up as a 3-player as well. I'm going to try and see if I can get that dynamic of a 3-player working, because I find 3-player games really interesting. So part of the reason of trying to get Capri and Santamora to work is like an intellectual exercise of this is my framework. This is my rule set.
Yeah.
I want this same rule set to work in all of these situations. I don't want to change the rules to make it work. I've got to make the rules that I've got work for these situations.
Sure.
And that's what I'm trying to do. And I think with Capri and Santamora, we're not quite there yet with the balancing, but the games are definitely working.
Good.
So I know it can be done. And so after the Vendée, I think I might start with Junot's Invasion of Portugal, the 1808, as a single standalone game. Again, a 4 dice game on this sort of scale, just to get the whole intro of the whole Peninsular War thing going, get the early battles in, and then if I get that going, the next game would be the Peninsular War.
Wow.
That would be the big one.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we'd all like to do that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone who likes Napoleon likes the Peninsula. It's
well, exactly.
It just offers so many different things.
It's got all the elements you want. It's got. I mean, even when Junot invades Portugal in 1808, I mean, he arrives outside Lisbon, and there's a Russian fleet in their harbour that, in 1808, is on the French side because of the Treaty of Tilst there. So the Portuguese are kind of, well, we've got a Russian fleet in our harbour and we've got a French army outside the gates. And the Russians, they don't particularly want to support the French. And the Admiral is like, well, I'm not going to do anything to help Junot. I find those kind of situations incredibly interesting,
history's
exploring amazing. What ifs, what can happen.
Yeah. I think that's an excuse to go and walk some of the ground as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. quick holiday to Portugal.
Absolutely. I went to Salamanca last year, and we walked the battlefield, and it was amazing.
How fantastic!
It's so well preserved as well.
I've heard it's really well. I've not been to Salamanca. I've heard it's well preserved.
You go up on the heights there, and you can just see the whole battlefield. It's impressive. And we went to Almeida as well, to the fortress at Almeida, which is in immaculate condition for its age.
Yeah. Wow.
There's a lot of sieges there. So you got sieges, you got partisans, you got everything, haven't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the Peninsular War is everything that suits this system.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely well matched for that.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Just for the benefit of perhaps an element of the gamers watching who we haven't talked about yet, and that's the solitaire game. I appreciate the games aren't specifically designed as solitaire, but any thoughts around that, whether to develop some kind of AI or would you just expect, as often I do anyway, that you set the game up and you could play it solitaire anyway from that point of view?
So the first game, Bonaparte's Eastern Empire, the only hidden information in that is when the French are trying to invade Egypt, they've effectively got 3 fleets. One's the real one, the other 2 are dummies. And the British players trying to intercept, not knowing what the real fleet is. That's part of the interception part of the game. That's the only bit of hidden information. So you can't do that one-handed without knowing what the thing is. Everything else about the game is all completely open. And so you can play all the games. So Maida, there's nothing in Maida that has hidden information in it at all. There's no holding cards. There's no reason why you can't play it two-handed as one person. So it's not a solitaire mode, but it is very solitaire suitable.
Yeah.
With coalitions, I didn't design that with a solitaire mode, and Phalanx asked for a solitaire mode for it. They said they were going to try and develop one, and did I want to try and develop one as well? Everyone sort of put our thinking hats on to try and come up with something. And I spent quite a long time trying to work out a solitaire mode for coalitions, and I really couldn't do it. I came up with something, but it was rubbish. In the end, some of the developers at Phalanx come up with some much better ideas, and Coalitions has got a solitaire mode in it, which is something that I didn't develop.
Sure.
I have come to the conclusion, because I don't actually play that many solitaire games, with true solitaire games. I've come to the conclusion I don't know enough about solitaire gaming, and probably don't have enough interest in solitaire gaming to design a pure solitaire AI mode for it.
Right, okay.
I'd be very open if somebody out there felt that they could do a solitaire mode for it and they wanted to. That would be absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't, wouldn't block that at all. That'd be great. But I don't think it's something that I could do well. So if I can't do it well, I don't really want to do it.
No, understand that. And if anyone listening thinks they can help Andy with that, get in touch.
Solitaire designer, get in touch.
I mean, I think it is, like you say, because there's not much hidden information. I think it's a game that could probably quite easily adapt a solitaire AI, if that's the right word. It could be useful. Someone can develop something, and could be an extra edition, maybe. to think about. So yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. So talked a bit about future campaigns. Any plans to? I think you've got quite a lot going on, to be fair. But any plans to develop any other types of games outside of the campaign Limits of Glory series?
Wouldn't rule that out. I haven't got any plans at the moment.
No, sure.
But the way I tend to design is, I tend to find a mechanic interesting, or I think of a mechanic comes to me, or something of interest comes to me that I want to investigate.
Yeah.
And then once I've got that kind of, that would be a really good thing, then I'd be inclined to then try to think, well, how can I design a game around this? You can't just kind of make yourself think of something that's interesting. So,
sure.
So I have nothing on the board at the moment that I'm designing.
Okay.
There's plenty of scope for work with this series for me for quite a while.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. But if something comes up that really interests me and I could see that it could be a good game, I would definitely slot that in.
Yeah.
I have played recently. I have played with the idea of a card game, like a multiplayer card game where each player effectively has their own deck, based in the Napoleonic period. So kind of like a battling card game. So again, just a very quick play, just a deck of cards effectively. So I had some quite interesting ideas about trying to make something work out of that, but as of yet, nothing's come that is. Nothing's come that is kind of usable.
No, sure.
So so that's about the only thing other than this that I've kind of toyed with.
Okay. So let's talk a bit about you, and I know you do a lot of shows, and you're getting out there, getting Form Square games out in the public domain, and obviously Bonaparte's Eastern Empire, as it's due to launch shortly. PunchCon. So I know you're an active sponsor of PunchCon. You've been involved in PunchCon for a few years now.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that. I must admit, it was only down to yourself that I really found out very much about PunchCon. I'd seen it advertised but didn't really understand it. I can't go this year, but it is on my agenda to go next year, definitely.
I would highly recommend you go. Fantastic board game, war game show. So it's organised between Cardboard Emperors, chap James Buckley, Cardboard Emperors, and Second Chance Games. They kind of organise it between them.
Yeah.
It's held in Coventry. It is this year, and it was last year, in a hotel. Can't remember the name of the hotel off the top of my head, but there's a hotel just outside Coventry.
Right.
It's like the whole sort of self-contained venue, so there's hundreds of rooms there. So anybody that wants to stay can stay. And they've got a massive kind of conference hall type, ballroom type hall. So they just set up with rows and rows of tables. So it's a purely kind of gaming convention.
Yeah. So
it's not like a trade show. It's not all full of stands selling stuff. People just basically go there to game.
Okay.
All day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday.
Wow.
So Second Chance Games are there. It's kind of their show, and so they've got a massive stand there, so you can buy board games if you want to.
Sounds
from
dangerous.
them.
Sounds dangerous.
they do like a bring and buy sale type of thing, which is quite interesting. So people are encouraged, because there's about, off the top of my head, I think it's about 170, 180 people going. And so I think they ask people to limit it to 2 games. So if you for the bring and buy, they got some tables set up in the corner of the hall.
Yeah.
You can take a couple of games, stick a post-it note on it with your phone number. Right. And then if anybody fancies buying your game, they just ring you, put your hand up in the hall, they walk over to you and sort the game out. So that was really good. That was quite, because 170 odd people all selling 2 games each, and really reasonably priced. People are mostly selling games that they don't want and they just want to get rid of them. So a lot of games are like 10 quid, 15 quid, 20 quid, and there were some really good games.
I definitely need to go to that. I've definitely got games I need to sell.
And
we all.
And I think the rule is kind of 2. You can put 2 games on the table at any one time.
Sensible.
So once you take a few, keep them in your room, and then once you've sold your games, you put 2 more on, and so on. So table's not overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They have a really a big prize draw. I think it's on Saturday night, the prize draw. Loads of games and things donated from sponsors. So GMT's a big sponsor as well. So loads of GMT games there, all in the raffle. Nuts Publishing as well, Phalanx as well as ourselves.
Great.
So there'll be lots of prizes on the raffle on the Saturday night. And then there's 2 or 3 sponsors. So Form Square Games, and I think Phalanx are sponsoring. I think Nuts are sponsoring. I think Sound of the Drum are sponsoring as well. And they're just, we just set up on one side of the hall, just with a table, just demoing the games. Yep. So not selling anything. It's not, you're not coming along there to buy anything. It's just, if you want to find out more about a game, just go. You can play a game. You can book in to play a game, or you can just have a talk through a rules teach or whatever you want, or just speak to people from the company and find out about what they're doing. So basically, it's a really lovely weekend of just gaming with your mates.
Sounds great.
It couldn't be better. Really. Yeah. I was there last year again, sponsoring it as Form Square Games, and it was absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And James and the chaps from Second Chance Games do a really good job. Sort of Phil and Richard, and the third brother, I can't remember his name. I'm terrible at remembering names. There you go. But it's a fantastic show, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone. I think they're sold out.
Are they? So they've got a limit on numbers.
Yeah, the tickets go up for sale. Generally, I think it's about Christmas, January time.
Okay.
They post up on Board Game Geek and stuff when they go for sale, and also the Cardboard Emperors. They've got a Facebook group that people can join. It's a board game group based in London. Right. So if you live anywhere near London and you want a board game, I think they meet on Monday nights at the moment in the White Bear pub. Okay. Kennington Oval, that sort of area. Right. And you can contact James and stuff. And it's basically they're the club that run the show. So. Sure.
Great. Sounds good. Sounds good. And we're filming this a few days before the next big event in the War Games calendar, which is Salute, I believe, on Saturday. And you're going to be there demonstrating.
Yeah, Salute demonstrating. Yeah, I don't know whether this video will go out before or after Salute, but
maybe
after. Yeah. So I was there last Saturday. Yeah. So I'm going to be demonstrating Maida. Okay. And I'll probably take prototypes of Capri and Santa Mora as well, so people can see those as well. Great. They have a smaller footprint as well, so the board is half the size of the bigger games. So the whole thing about them is designed to be small and quick. It's all about just getting a quick game in if you've only got an hour. Sure. So I'll be demonstrating those. So if anybody wants to come and see us, or if this comes out after Salute, if anyone wants to come see us next year at Salute, we'll be there again next year.
I'm going to have to get editing quickly, aren't I? Hopefully there won't be too much editing because we've done such good film. It won't be a problem. But so just on Maida and Capri Santa Mora, are you game founding those as well? Is that the plan?
Yeah. So Maida is up at the moment on Game Found. Okay. The campaign preview page. Yeah. So you can go onto Game Found and follow the campaign. Great. Sorry, excuse me. And then you'll be notified when it launches. Great. Hoping to launch June time. Okay.
So similar to last year.
Yeah, same sort of time as last year.
Same delivery kind of time scale as well, a year maybe?
I'm hoping it's going to be considerably quicker. Okay. Because of everything that I've learned in all of the preparation for Bonaparte in Egypt. So Maida is at a much more advanced stage development-wise and finish-wise, artwork-wise and rulebook-wise, compared to Bonaparte at the same time when I was about to launch. You know what I mean? So hopefully by the time if we launch in June, almost straight afterwards we'll be able to start working towards getting it manufacturing, getting it out. But I don't want to promise too much.
No,
hopefully it'll be quicker.
Yeah, no.
So I've got to try.
No, that's okay. We've been conscious. We've been talking for a very long time, so I'm going to wrap things up. I've just got one last request, really, and that's obviously I'm conscious that you've done a lot of reading, a lot of research for Bonaparte's Eastern Empire, and I must admit I've not read many books on the Egyptian campaign or seen many books, and I know we're talking off air. There are obviously a lot more than I'm aware of. But is there any particular one that you would recommend or direct listeners to who are interested in finding out a little bit more about the campaign?
Yeah, there are several, and what I think I'll do is I'll email you a little short list.
Yeah, great.
And then perhaps you can put it in the
we
video.
Can. Yep.
Like a bibliography.
Yep.
Because I'm shockingly bad at remembering names off the top of my head.
Especially when I've had you talking for all this time.
Yeah. There's one very good book that was the Perry twins have started doing a range of figures for Bonaparte Egypt. So I was watching one of their videos, and they started that range because after one of the twins had read one of the books on the British Army in Egypt in 1801, and they pointed me to that. This was quite a few years ago, and that was one of the first books I kind of read when I was kind of doing the research.
Okay.
And that was a really interesting read. Really, it goes into all the British Army preparation, Marmaris, and the problems that Abercrombie had and what he was facing and so on. So really good book, but it's just about the British intervention. So it's only really 1801. It's not about the whole campaign, but that's a fantastic book.
Okay.
Christopher Hibbett's book about the Egyptian campaign is a kind of a stalwart book that's been out for years and years. But there's quite a few newer books. I think Strathern, I think it's the name of one of the chapters, done a really good history on it. So I'm going to cough again.
That's okay. No, you're fine.
But also there's quite a lot of there's one of the Helias books. There's a book on the Egyptian campaign from Helias, which is quite a good read. Got a lot of good uniform detail in there. Actually, a lot of good stuff in there. I'm trying to think. Memoirs. I've read quite a few memoirs. They can be a bit harder to get hold of. I read one with the guns in the desert, which is the memoirs of a French artillery officer, Don Martin, I think his name was, which was really interesting. It had really interesting bits of it, because it was a memoir, really interesting bits of information about some really kind of really weird stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think about. And hardly anything about being with the guns as you're reading it, which I was quite disappointed, until you get to the Siege of Acre. And then the detail about the Siege of Acre is the detail about each caliber gun in each redoubt, where they were placed, how many rounds they were firing, what angles they had, maps showing how the guns fired. Just absolutely fantastic. So when if you wanted to research the Siege of Acre, that one book would give you all the information you could ever want.
Right.
But for other parts of the campaign, it was kind of really sketchy. He was there with his brother, and his brother got badly injured, and then he was worried. One of the things that reading so many of these books is we kind of think of the French army as being cut off in Egypt, but they really weren't at all. There was a lot of movement backwards and forwards. A lot of people went home and came back. They got messages coming through quite often. They'd get on small boats and just basically make a run for it. Some of them were being intercepted, but a lot of them didn't.
A lot of them weren't.
No. So his brother gets injured, and in the end, his brother gets on a boat and gets sent back to France and makes it back to France, which is quite interesting. He spends most of his time concerned about whether his brother got back or not. So that kind of thing is interesting. There was another memoir by Moiret, something like that. Again, you have to. I'll give you a list of these, and that was really interesting about day-to-day life living in Egypt with the locals and the local customs and how savage it was. If you wanted to send a message from one place to another, often you had to send about 250 or 150 men with the message, or else the message wouldn't get through.
No, sure.
So that kind of thing makes you think about
good.
Stuff.
Yeah, good. Well, look, thank you for giving up all your time. As I say, I think I've talked you to the point that you've lost your voice.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit dry.
So,
get a glass of water.
Yes, absolutely. But for now, thank you, and hopefully, I wish you lots of luck with the launch for Maida, and I hope you sell many more copies of Bonaparte's Eastern Empire, because as I say, it's great game. I'm sure Maida and Capri Santa Mora will be exactly the same, and I wish you luck for the future, and hopefully you'll be able to come back on and talk to us more about your games in the future. That'd be great.
Thank you very much, James.
Thanks, Andy.
I look forward to it.
Cheers.
Yeah.